we begin with the quality of construct representation, and then we look at the quality of policy inferences. Implicit in the quality of policy inferences are notions of test impact, washback, and consequence, which we owe, I think, largely to the great thinker Sam Messick, who has so much informed validity theory. And it was Alderson and Wall who said there is a set of relationships, intended and unintended, positive and negative. That's where the bull or the elephant comes in, between policies, tests, and stakeholders. And within language testing, when we talk about test impact, we're referring to that relationship, the effect of testing on individual stakeholders or educational systems and society at large. Now, in recent times, there has been a movement away, I think. There are many people, many authorities in the audience here who could either confirm or refute this, away from the division between impact and washback. But I like returning for this talk to the notion of different types of impact. There is a social impact, a widespread macro level impact from tests and the inferences we draw from tests. But there's also a washback on the individual teacher, learner, test taker, stakeholder. So I want to maintain that distinction. In arguing that in the remainder of the talk, what we can do then is look at evaluating the test as a policy initiative. And I think it's important to say here that in many contexts, people don't look at tests. They don't look at the tests themselves. And I'm speaking about work that I did with a colleague south of the border, Shelley Fairbairn, when we were looking at policies, language testing policies, accountability policies in Canada and the United States. And what we found in contexts where tests were introduced to monitor achievement, as they are in the States in relation to the No Child Left Behind policy, that the typical response was fix the test taker, fix the teacher, fix the curriculum, not fix the test. That in fact the tests seem to operate as a kind of, as we wrote, sacrosanct area, like that mysterious black box that only the expert can control, that only the expert understands. And I think that, if there's anything that we leave here today with, it is the notion that really we need to develop the understanding that actually tests are often the bulls in the china shop, right? That what we are trying to build, what we are trying to construct, it can be undermined by the unintended consequences of improper testing. So let us look then at some criteria, now that we've gone through this sort of background on validity that is out in the literature. These are the three criteria that I'm drawing from that literature in order to evaluate a couple of cases of testing practice. Adequacy of construct representation. This relates to the upper part of the chain of inference in Kane's diagram, the operational definitions of policies and mandates, and the definition of scoring procedures and evidence of generalizability on the top half. That's the construct definition component. And then on the lower half of the circle, we're going to be looking at washback and how washback impacts individuals and social impact in terms of societal impact. So the two tests then that I want to look at in the China shop are the test of the Education Quality and Accountability Office, which is a it's sort of separate from the Ministry of Education in Ontario, but funded by the Ministry of Education. It is a minimum competency grade 10 literacy test. Students in the province of Ontario must pass the OSSLT in order to graduate from high school. If they fail the OSSLT, they then can take the OSSLC, which is the Ontario Secondary School Literacy course. It has often occurred to me that maybe it would be better to give the course before the test, but that's how the system is working. And if they pass the course, they then receive a diploma from high school. So you might consider this a rather benign activity. On the other hand, from what I understand, and I'm sure there are members in the audience here, it has been the case that a diploma from the OSSLC, based on an OSS satisfactory completion of an Ontario course, will not allow the student to immediately go on for tertiary study in university or college. So it's not as benign as one might think. So that's the first test I'd like to look at. And then the second test I'd like to look at in relation to language policy is the official language policy translation into the SLE, the second language evaluation tests, which are developed and administered by the Public Service Commission of Canada. And of course, the two constructs that are at the base of the consideration of these two tests are the constructs of literacy and bilingualism. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here we're looking at test as a translation of a curricular policy in the case of the OSSLT. It's part of, as I was mentioning before, an increasing number of tests that are administrative arms for accountability agendas, accountability curriculum. There has been a concern in the literature. I mentioned the article that I wrote with Shelley Fairbairn about how these tests are affecting the lives of second language learners. And with my colleague from Queen's, Li-Ying Ching, we've looked at the OSSLT, for example, and we have found that there are significantly higher failure rates of second language learners on this test and significantly lower participation rates. You have to be recommended in order to take the test if you are a second language learner in an ESL class. So we have conditions there that suggest a need for a reconsideration, perhaps. If we look at the mandate, remember from the chain of inference, we start with the mandate and purpose, according to Kane. Well, the mandate of the Education Quality and Accountability Office is to conduct province-wide tests at key developmental points. So the OSSLT at grade 10 level is only one of a series of tests that are now occurring throughout the education path in primary and secondary levels. The EQAO mandate is to act as a catalyst for the increasing success of students in Ontario, to provide a gauge of quality, to add to the current knowledge about student learning, and serve as an important tool for improvement. Okay, so that is its mandate. We have invested a considerable amount of money in this testing enterprise. According to reports from the EQAO last year, Ontario invested $33 million in the operation of this testing enterprise. And I think that's very important given our financial situation generally in educational contexts. So I want to begin by examining the literacy construct as it is operationalized on the OSSLT. And I want us to think about the literacy construct in relation to the video clip that I'm going to show you. This is a 16-month-old child. Okay, 16-month-old child. She's growing up in a plurilingual family, which is very common in Canada. Her mother speaks Farsi and French. Her father speaks English and Arabic. And they communicate largely in Arabic. She is actually learning Arabic. It's an interesting family setting. Also, the grandparents are in the home, and they speak only Farsi. So the father, I think, is picking up Farsi because of his Arabic along with the child. I think it's, when you begin to look at family linguistic contexts, you begin to see something about the nature of Canada and where we're going. All right, so I want to play this short clip for you of a 16-month-old child growing up in a plurilingual context. Okay. 16-month-old, right? And I think when we look at that clip, we begin to see issues that clearly are present now. But what is important for me in this clip is the sort of notions that we've had about pre-literacy. You know, how we've talked so much about kids holding books in the right way and learning to share the book with their parents and understanding directionality, understanding what a child is gaining from, turning the pages, that whole sort of experience that we talk about as being so fundamental and so important to traditional forms of literacy. I think we see all that in that clip. That child playing with a toy, the father reaching down to try to turn it off, and then the child re-engaging, understanding the movement of text, understanding and deriving joy. And this is a pre-verbal child. The child is not, speaking in words yet. She is verbalizing, obviously, her joy at this experience. And she understands there's something to be gained there. And I hope you saw she got all the way to the internet in that. All right. I want you to hold that image in your heads as we talk about literacy and the operational definition of literacy on the OSSLT. 3 different text types, 12 short selections, an information section, about 50%, graphics, and a narrative. 3 test formats, multiple choice, constructed response, and constructed response requiring an explanation. 3 reading skills are being assessed, understanding directly stated ideas, indirectly stated ideas, making connections between personal experience and ideas, and 4 reading strategies: vocabulary, syntax, organization, and graphic features. Writing is also assessed, including a summary, series of paragraphs, news report, information paragraph, and students need